Congratulations on the nomination. I think I saw this leading up to like Critics' Choice Documentary Awards, and I remember watching it, not knowing what it was about at all. I just had seen like the poster, and I knew or just felt that it was just like I just knew that people wouldn't be able to not be bowled over by it. Like I've seen it I think three or four times now, and it's really I don't know, it's a real punch in the gut. And I
Yeah.
feel like the wind is knocked out of me every single time I watch it. I just rewatched it yesterday and I was like, holy shit, it just yeah, so long-winded to say, I really as much as you can say you can enjoy a movie like this, I
Right.
it's just incredibly well crafted and I was so thrilled to see that you were nominated. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, I guess this may sound like a silly question, but I was genuinely curious. Like, I like that you start out like a shot from space, quite literally a shot from
All right.
space, and we zoom in. And I guess I wanted to know if you could just tell me a little bit about the decision of going all the way out here and then zooming into where the majority of the film takes place.
Right. I mean, I did think we needed a map to show people where they were.
Hmm.
And so that was the first, um, you know, not just where Chicago is, but where on the south side of Chicago you are. And um, and so that was my first thought. I was also thinking of, Power of Ten,
Mm.
um, where it takes a couple picnicking in Chicago and goes exponentially out in
Yeah.
space. So a reference to that. Um, and then also, that this film is titled Incident, so this is like an incident ray of light.
Mm.
Um, and you are traveling to this with no preconceptions about where you are. You're
Mm.
hitting the
Okay.
planet, and what do you see? At first, you see a man stumbling out into the street and lying there, and then you find out that he's been shot, and eventually you find out that an officer has shot him, and that the officer has a fake excuse about why he shot him.
Yeah.
So it's about what your preconceptions are coming in, and that
Yeah.
audio is withheld, information is withheld, and
Hmm.
eventually it becomes apparent what happened and why. You know.
Okay. Yeah, the no sound. I like that. It's sort of when I rewatched it the last time, I was trying to remember. I was like, when I know the sound comes in, but like what prompts the sound? And I think it's the because originally in my brain I thought it was the gunshot, and it's not the gunshot. It's the is it the clicking of the radio? I think it is. Like
Uh,
right afterwards.
it's incumbent on the officer to turn his body cam on
Mm,
as an incident develops.
Jesus.
You can argue that that's putting a lot on an officer. The analogy I make is it's like if you're fishing and you're about to catch a big fish, you turn the camera on before you get your strike. I mean,
Mm,
you're to ask an officer to all of a sudden become cinematographer at the moment where something is escalating is a lot. I think, the probably there should be a way that the cameras are remotely triggered or triggered by something that the officer does when he takes his gun out or something, So,
yeah.
um, um, but in this case, he turns it on after he's shot Augustus. This is the
Hmm.
officer Halley, and the first thing we hear is police shot uh, and shot. Then he realizes that that's not right,
Right.
and so he says, shots fired by police, and then he says fuck, and he starts to construct his story. So, we're in silent. We don't have the only audio we have in the entire film are from the police body worn
Right.
cameras, POD that not the initial shot of the Google Earth zoom, but the first establishing shot we have looking northeast from the south side of 71st Street is what they call a police observation device, or
Mm.
POD. That's silent. The dashboard cam footage is silent. Uh, this closed circuit TV footage is silent. So the only thing that's really informing the audio and telling the story are the cameras that are on the officers, which are increasingly narrated by the officer with this sort of leading testimony, and then you get this counter testimony from the community who's been
Yeah.
kept at bay, and they're picking up their audio, and they serve almost like a Greek chorus, telling the truth about what happened.
Yeah, I feel like every time that I've seen it, the amount of after it happens and then the story is being constructed afterwards, it's just so like when I showed it to my husband when we were going through the short list, um he's a very passionate person, but I did not expect him to basically a lot of stuff that comes out of Officer Fleming's mouth. Just he was just like screaming at the television and like
Right.
some of the things. She's like, I thought I was gonna die. He pulled a
Yeah.
gun out on us.
Yeah.
There's another one when the an officer, it's when we're in the car and the officer in the driver's seat, she says, who wasn't even there, you didn't do anything wrong. And it was just like,
Right.
you weren't there, you didn't see what happened.
Right.
Um, okay. I guess
Yeah.
I wanted to,
That's some kind of job where your superior is telling you you didn't do anything wrong, and they don't have any proof of that.
yeah. And it's also this like growing thing, whether it's something that's caught on camera or say when like a politician says something, it's like I find myself increasingly being like, we can see you, and we have
Right.
quite literal video evidence of X, Y, and Z, and you're lying to our faces.
Yeah. You're
Growing.
talking the RFK Jr. testimony yesterday was
Oh, that was uh any really I was sort of not just that, but yeah, that was something I had to turn off because I had to like put my phone away yesterday because it's like you don't know anything. So
right.
I had to physically separate myself yesterday. Um I did want to know from you in terms of I think this thing is insanely edited. I think that the not edited, like, the way that it's pieced together and like when the split screens come in, I love how you structure it in terms of I don't want to say containing chaos, but it's I like that there's dialogue on multiple boxes at once. I feel like you really drop us into the absolute maddening situation of if we were walking down the street and we happened to see this, or the police are telling us to step back. Um, I guess I wanted to just ask about format, maybe being tempted to like make things clear when it is all spelled out right there in front of us. Just piecing together a lot of frenetic material all at once. I don't want to say like how do you do that? But sort of like how do you do that? And I guess is that just something that really just enhances a story like this and getting us emotionally invested?
I mean, yeah, my primary role here was as an editor, and what you're
Hmm.
describing is editing. There was an enormous amount of footage, probably 20 hours of footage.
Yeah.
Um, and I set about trying to create a narrative from it. Mostly relying on the officers who were on the scene at the beginning and following them through, but then different characters appear along the way,
Hmm.
and framing it within this the context of that we're coming out of silence and then returning to silence. So
Hmm.
creating a structure that was implied by the introduction of audio and then the
Hmm.
removal of audio. I agree that and this was something I played around with first, was just trying to um, include as many different perspectives as possible
Hmm.
and find a way to sync them together and how they could coexist in the same frame. And then realizing that that created chaos, like you said, like it
Hmm.
created something like the panic in the viewer, and they're trying to catch up, and it's also, you have this horrific moment that's followed sort of like with the calm before the storm. And then as everyone realizes the implication, the officer realizes, his partner realizes, the
Hmm.
community realizes, the force at large realizes that they have a burgeoning problem on their hand.
Yeah.
Things start to escalate, and that's when we start splitting the screen. Different narratives start being offered. We've seen what happened, but the first split screen is when Hallie lies to his sergeant and says he pointed a gun right at me, and then
Yeah.
slams the door. And now we're in two screens and we're getting different views. We're getting the community's view, so we're getting Hallie's view, and then what's sort of blindly being repeated as the official narrative is Hallie's story.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I think maybe just on repeated viewings, it's sort of like the really troubling idea of, well, I thought to myself, like lying to like maybe cover for yourself. And then I think on a second watch or third watch, I thought to myself, that thing when you see people buy into everything that they say and they start to believe it. I think that's actually a little bit more, I don't know, I considered
Yeah.
that too. And I was just, that's frightening to me. It's even though it's the sort of thing I've been mentioning, like presentation of evidence and stuff like that. That really freaked me out. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's a very telling exchange between Hallie and Fleming
mhm,
right at the beginning, just when they step onto the sidewalk and they have a very quick and private conversation.
mhm,
And he says to her, his partner, "Was it a gun?" She goes, "Yes." And she says, "Did you get the gun?" "Yes." And
mhm.
then he goes, "Why did he have to point a gun right at us?"
Yeah,
So he went from not knowing that there was a gun to
two. Mhm.
confirming that not only was there a gun, but it's now in police possession, and to making up whatever story is going to be the official narrative going on. And I think that's very telling.
Yeah.
There was only one angle where we see Officer Jones, who's the 12-year vet who initially stops Augustus to question him. And I think if it had been left just up to him, we wouldn't have had this tragedy because it seemed to be following police protocol, stop a
Yeah.
guy, ask him a question, have a conversation, maybe give a citation. And it wasn't until Hallie, Fleming, and Officer Tan approached with their guns already drawn, convinced that they'd bagged a big game here, that, things went off the rails. But there's only one angle where we see Officer Jones step down and actually take the gun out of the holster.
Hmm.
And that is the most damning evidence. It's also the last shot of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, the sort of when we re when at the very end when we're in silence again. It's weird when I rewatched it, it felt like I was hearing stuff in silence and I had to remind myself. It was like, no, there's no sound. The way that Augustus is facing the officer and then the way that the officers reach for him, like Fleming reaches for him, and it's just like, holy shit, it's sort of like I can't
Yeah,
believe what I'm seeing.
it was,
Um, yeah,
it's breathtaking.
yeah,
I'm still shocked by it, and I've seen it
yeah,
thousands of times now.
yeah. And the sort of I didn't notice this the first time I watched it, but when we realize that we're amid all of that chaos and we're bouncing from perspective to perspective. For some reason on the last watch when I saw it, it was the there's a shot when it's slightly from above when we see Augustus, he's laying in the street and there's a young person. I think they have like a pink backpack and run they run out of the frame, and it was
Yeah.
just sort of when I rewatched it, I wanted to run with that person to get out of what we were seeing, and that person obviously felt like they were in danger, and I don't know, that stuck out to me for some reason on the last time that I watched it.
Yeah,
um
that person that you identified is a really interesting character in this.
mm,
He's wearing a bright red shirt,
Right.
and
Okay.
he's walking with the entire entourage of the officers, and he's walking in pace with them
Mm,
as they're coming west. So he has a clear view of everything.
yeah.
Um, and when the shots are fired, you're right, he bolts. And then
Yeah.
he comes back in the scene, and it turns out he has a speech impediment. So the
Mm,
first sound you hear is this really like this squealing, screaming kind of
hmm.
and that's him
Oh yeah.
trying
Oh
to
really?
tell
Okay.
people what happened. And in one of those squares, and I know it's hard to keep track of everything that's happening, but
Hmm.
he's pointing at his eyes and he's pointing at Hallie, saying, "I saw what you did." And that's the thing that really freaks Hallie out, that that the whole crowd is coming down.
Ooh.
But this guy is he has a speech impediment. He's not able to tell people his truth. So it's really
Yeah.
incredibly, tragic. And then,
Wow.
we also see him later once he's been cordoned off further west down 71st Street, and we
Hmm.
cut back to him and he's trying to explain to another officer what he's seen, but unable to do so. So that's a really compelling character, that guy in the red shirt.
Oh wow. Okay. I want to watch it again now. Just oof. Okay. Um, I know this may sound like a generic question, but I guess I wanted to know, I haven't seen this yet in a theater. I'm anxious to
Right.
when like the shorts play in theaters.
Yeah.
I'm seeing like I feel like I haven't seen a lot of films, whether feature or short, that have like surveillance footage a lot on the big screen. So I'm anxious to see it on the big screen, and I imagine that I'm going to be even more impacted by seeing it on a larger screen. I guess I wanted to know, when you do screen it, does it for you like do you what kind of I'll say like what kind of reaction you get, but I mean like I feel like that has to even feel more larger than life than us watching it at home. And I guess I wanted to know if any sort of reaction sticks out to you.
Yeah, I mean, you can always feel how a film is playing in a
Oh
in a
yeah.
room. Um, with Incident, it's just absolute silence.
Mm,
It's really tension is really strong anytime I've seen it in a room.
yeah.
And and I think first time we ever played it in the States was at Telluride, and we
Mm,
really felt like we felt the power of what the film could do to a room. Um,
wow.
I, when you get a chance to see it with a big screen, I encourage you to try to get, of course, it's been online. The New Yorker released it in August. It's probably 90% of the people have seen it online
Hmm.
on their laptops or whatever. It's first of all, there's a lot of text and it bounces around, so it's harder to keep track of.
Hmm.
It's easier in a theater also when it's larger, and also we have a 5:1 mix,
Hmm.
so I think it places you more in the crowd. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's I mean, of course, any filmmaker wants their film to be seen in a theater, but I think
Yeah.
it is enhanced by the also the community feeling, and just the group shared horror.
Yeah. The um the first time I watched it like on a laptop, but then when I showed a lot of the shorts to my husband, we have like a it's nothing super fancy, but we have like a movie room in the basement with like a with a huge TV and a like Dolby Atmos sound, and I completely felt the difference. It felt
Yeah.
like I
Yeah,
felt like
you've kind of
voice
had that
yeah.
experience then, I guess, of having it bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it is enhanced by having strangers next to you, I guess.
Yeah, that's I think that's kind of what I want. I'm anxious to it sounds like a weird feeling or a weird thing to say, but it was just sort of like I want to see this film with a crowd just to sort of feel their reaction. And I would love to have just a random conversation with a stranger after the movie is over. Um, okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bill. I just I I just can't believe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I just think it's absolutely breathtaking and every on repeated viewing. Sorry, I just keep saying I saw it again, but it was just like the I don't know, I felt just very compelled by what is pieced together on here and like that sort of
And it was
clarity.
all
They,
available to the public.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
parameter, that it's publicly accessible footage.
When you say like, body cam footage is made public 60 days after any incident, and
Yeah.
I that sort of blew my mind that it was just like, wow,
Well,
this is
well, they've since changed that law in Chicago anyway, where
oh,
now if two officers talk about an incident after the fact, it's grounds for deletion, that it's not publicly admissible anymore. So
oh
they've
shit.
created this sort of catch-22 Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass, where the very fact that you're talking about something that just happened is grounds to
So
delete it.
wait,
So this footage could not exist anymore.
so like if Hallie and Fleming were talking about it after the fact, they would throw out the
They
footage
would
of
throw
it?
out this footage now.
Oh,
Yeah.
fuck. Okay.
It makes no sense at all,
Makes
right?
no
It's
sense.
complete, Alice in Wonderland shit. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again for your time. Really rooting for you.
Oh, thanks
Congratulations
so
again.
much.
Yeah.
I hope other people feel the same way. I
Yeah.
want the film to get seen. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you
All
too.
right.
Bye.
Bye.